So our hospitals, Sangrur and Slight Longowal, we have an academic collaboration between the directors. So at the onset, I will thanks Dr. Sailendra, Professor Sailendra Jain and Professor Arora for this nice initiative to consider our hospital into this program. So first, before going into the artificial intelligence part of radiation oncology, I would like to introduce a little brief about the advances in radiation oncology, because I guess most of the audience here is the biomedical engineering or biotech students, and I am a doctor addressing all of them. So at the onset, the radiation, I think all of us must be knowing the types of electromagnetic radiations, starting from the radio wave to microwave, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma ray. So as a radiation oncologist in the cancer treatment, we use mostly the X-rays and gamma rays for the treatment of our patients. So gamma ray mostly comes from the intranuclear part of an atom, and X-ray comes from the electrons of an atom. So this is the very basics to understand before going into the radiation oncology. These are all the units of radiation oncology. I am not touching them: energy, activity, exposure, karma, dose, absorbed dose, equivalent dose, and effective dose. Joule is the energy. Activity we measure in terms of becquerel and Curie. Exposure is measured in Coulomb and Roentgen. Then fluence. Then comes the karma is the absorbed dose, and absorbed dose is expressed in terms of rad or gray and centigrade. Then equivalent dose and effective dose. So now coming to the proper radiation part, how a radiation is ejected. Once a incident photon collides on an atom, either it displaces the electron and the scattered photon traverses the tissue. So when the electron is displaced in the four cells like the K, L, M, N, there will be ejection of X-rays in terms of the difference of energy between the cells. So we get two types of X-rays. One is the continuous X-ray, which is called Bremsstrahlung radiation, and the other one is the characteristics radiation, considering taking into account the difference of energy between the cells around the nucleus, and the scattered photon also gets displaced. So so this is a basically a photoelectric effect, and sometimes the photon also behaves as a mass to displace a electron, and electron also behaves as a transmitting the energy which is contributed from the incident photon. The scattered photon and electron further goes down and collides with the atoms in our body, and there are free radicals are produced from the water molecules, because 95% of human body is constituted of water, and these free radicals further goes down to damage the DNA, which is the abnormal part in causing the cancer. So so this is the brief of radiation, generation of radiation. So how the radiation oncology department functions, I will try to explain it. So radiation therapy, radiotherapy uses the various forms of radiation in the effective treatment of cancer, and it is more than 100 years has been used towards the service of patients. So when the radiation collides with the any of the cancer cell, these are the double helix DNA present in our cancer cells. So the radiation, when it collides, it breaks the DNS, and once the DNS are broken, being these are the abnormal DNS, they cannot repair themselves, and the cell finally dies. So the cancer cell dies because of the radiation. So, but the radiation is not a single man's effort. Like I am a radiation oncologist, I cannot treat the patient on my whole. It is a multidisciplinary treatment involving so many persons in the background before delivery of the actual radiation to the patient. So who are the team members in the radiation oncology department? Doctor is called a radiation oncologist. I belong to this fraternity, and then comes the medical physicist. They are the MSc. They have done MSc in medical physics. The course is persisting in few of the centers and universities across India. After MSc in medical physics, they work as a physicist, and their main plan is to plan the treatment part from the machine, how the radiation will be generated and what dose it will be delivered to the patient. Then the radiation therapist, who actually treats the patient and takes the patient on machine, and along with them for the helping hand, the female patients are also there. So radiation oncology nurse also comes in our treatment part. So the basic workflow in the radiation department, starts with the workup. Workup is the investigation part of the patient. When a patient comes, we have to first diagnose him whether he is a cancer patient or not a cancer patient. When is radiation used?
Yes, 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 yes. We are seeing it.
So I will continue. So I
Yes.
was here in the simulation part. So the radiation treatment starts with simulation, then it goes to treatment planning and then treatment delivery. So in simulation, we take a CT scan of the patient of the desired area which we are going to radiate. So before we take a CT scan, we have to fix the patient body with a thermoplastic mold. We dip, this is basically a plastic material, we dip it into a hot water and we put it in the head or neck or wherever the desired area so that it takes the shape of the body. After that we take a CT scan, we get multiple axial images like this, and these images are then pushed into a computerized planning system. On the planning system we have to generate a plan how to deliver the treatment. So the planning part is again two types, one is 2D treatment planning and one is 3D treatment. In 2D treatment, you can see we treat only in two axes like a x and y. It is a open type, square type open field. We treat in a patient in a two field, like one will be anterior field, one will be a posterior field. I mean one will be from the front side of body and the other will be from the back side of the body. We cannot change anything in between, and the entire area is getting the same dose. And when we talk about a 3D planning, then in the CT scans, we have to draw structures like this. Here you can see this is the urinary bladder, this green one. This blue one is the rectum and the red one is the prostate or cervix or uterus is in a female area, female patient which we want to treat. So after we draw the images in all the axial scans we get from the CT scan, it gives us a three-dimensional view which shows two types of things, like target organ and one is the organs which needs to be spared from radiation. So this is how a 3D planning is done. You can see there are some multiple beams coming from different sides. See the 3D treatment planning, the slide which I am talking.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we need further images like a PET scan and a CT scan for the planning of the patient. And when the treatment process starts, we review the patient every weekly. And this is how the beam arrangement is done in a radiation delivery from different angles. And now comes the actually delivery part. The patient is taken on the radiation machine. This is the couch and this is the machine, how it rotates around the body to deliver the radiation. So now the radiation, we have different types of radiation, that is three-dimensional radiation therapy, intensity modulated radiation therapy and image guided radiation therapy, IGRT. So there are very basic differences amongst all of them. Sir, can you see the slide correctly?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay, sir. So I have not done the slide so on now because I think in this mode it's coming properly. So I am continuing like this. So in this screen, I would like to brief out what is the basic differences between the 2D plan and 3D plan and IMRT plan. Suppose this is the in a wooden block we have drawn a patient body like this. This is the anterior view and this is the side view. This is the front view. If we want to treat this entire patient, then we have to take this type of square field. You can see this is a square field and we are treating the entire area in this, which constitutes this is the, suppose this patient is the disease part, but these areas which is outside the patient are the normal areas, and these normal areas also getting radiation with this 3D planning, with this 2D planning. So to avoid these normal areas, we can cut out these areas, then it gives a 3D conformal shape to the body. So this is what a 3-dimensional radiation. If we give a 2-dimensional therapy, this we will have a square field only, like this x and y axis, two axis, and we will treating everything coming inside this. If we do a 3-dimensional conformal radiation therapy, then we will be limiting our field to the edges of the patient, avoiding these normal areas which should not get radiation. And if we go further, higher modalities of treatment, which is called IMRT, intensity modulated radiation therapy, then we carve out, you have to imagine like we are carving out the body like this, exactly how the shape is, and we can deliver different type of doses to the head, to the neck, to the hand and to the body, wherever we want how much dose. So that is something called IMRT. So this is what the basic difference between 3D CRT and IMRT. You can see in 3D CRT we are giving a square field, open fields from all four sides, and we are treating this area and this is the red area you can see as it's coming like a square. But in our treatment intent is this inner red line which you are seeing. And the surrounding the areas are the normal areas, but they are also getting radiated in 3D CRT. But in IMRT, see, we have given at least 6 fields, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we have limited our dose to the target area. So, and we are sparing the surrounding areas which we are getting the dose in earlier 3D CRT. Then comes the part of IGRT. IGRT is a image guided radiation therapy. That means daily we have to match the image. The radiation when starts to a patient, it continues for a 1 month or 1.5 months. So every day patient comes to the machine. So daily patient will be lying on the couch. So everyday position may not be the same what we are expecting on the first day. So daily we take a CT scan on the machine and we match it with the planning CT we have taken on the first day. So there will be overlay of the 2 CTs. You can see this below down is one CT and the upper this hazy zone is another CT. So we are matching the bony areas. You can see it is perfectly matched. And after the tissues are exactly matched, then we start the radiation. This is called image guided radiation therapy because we are guiding the image before we deliver the radiation beam. So how the so this is something called registration, registration verification before the delivery. You can see the both CT scan images, one is here and one is here. They are overlapping, and before we are treating the patient. This is a window of the thoracic. This is the lungs and the heart area. You can see that this is the verification CT and this is the planning CT. Planning CT was taken on the day 1 on the during the simulation, and verification CT is taken daily basis on the machine before we deliver. We match the both CTs perfectly, then we deliver the beam. And this is what something called total marrow irradiation for the leukemia patients, and then something called stereotactic radiation, which is a very highly specialized kind of radiation in a multiple metastatic setting when a cancer arising from one body spreads to different areas in our human body like brain, neck, lungs, liver, and this bone. Then we can radiate each individual areas, very smaller areas with a very higher dose of radiation, which is called a stereotactic radiation therapy. So these are the modalities I explained just now: 2D CRT, 3-dimensional conformal, intensity modulated radiation therapy, image guided radiation therapy, then stereotactic therapy, and then something is there is particle beam therapy. I will explain later. So how this radiation oncology evolved over the years. In the 60s, we were basically left with a 2-dimensional therapy. In 70s, we started with wedge and block. We were blocking the outside areas. Then we started something customized block. Individual patient, we have to generate individual blocks and before delivery of radiation. And in the 90s, we came up with this computerized modality of radiation therapy, which is called IMRT and IGRT. So behind this radiation oncologic department, 4 people are playing a role: the nuclear medicine and particle physics, computer science, the imaging, and the biotechnology. So the types of radiation are divided into 2 types. One is directly ionizing and the one is indirectly ionizing. Directly ionizing as the charged particles like electron, proton, which have a definite charge inside it. And the indirectly ionizing are basically electromagnetic radiation like X-ray and gamma rays, and the neutron, which is a neutral particle, but when it collides with the human body, they generate further X-rays down the body. So directly ionizing are electron, proton, and alpha particle. Indirectly ionizing are X-ray, gamma ray, and neutrons. So the physics behind is one is electromagnetic wave, which is a photon, and the particulate radiation are the electron, protons, and neutrons. So how the photon plays a role? Photon has a definite penetration in the body. It can penetrate up to you can say 10 centimeter or 5 centimeter. But in the electron, when we come to it, cannot penetrate much into the body. It penetrates hardly into 5 centimeter or less than that. But it has a flattening beam energy which covers a symmetrical dose across the area where we are treating. So how the radiation, what radiation beams we are using in our treatment? Mostly we use the X-rays and the gamma rays. Gamma rays are generated from a radioactive elements, and
Excuse me, sir. Dr. Tapa's slide is again not moving, sir. There is some issue. It's in the chat box written by participants.
Okay.
Now it's moving, sir. Now it's okay.
Now it's
in
coming.
between. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
So,
sir.
madam, I will continue like this only.
Yes.
If I do the slide share, then it closes. The slide is not moving. So I will continue like this. Okay, madam. So in the radiation source, we are using X-rays and gamma rays. X-rays are basically low energy radiation. Gamma ray has the higher penetration. Gamma ray comes from a radioactive element, and X-ray comes from the after you switch on the beam with a electronic energy. So the X-ray, we have two types of radiation therapy. One is external beam therapy, and one is the brachytherapy. In external beam, the radiation machine doesn't touch the patient. It rotates around the body and delivers radiation. In brachytherapy, we place a radiation source inside the body of a patient, and that gives the radiation. And there is the third thing is called systemic radioisotope therapy. In this, we give radioisotopes as a form of injection into the patient's body, and that stays in body and delivers radiation for a long time. So how the X-ray works? X-ray, we work in a superficial therapy or deep therapy by kilovoltage, mostly in the energy of kilovoltage range. And in gamma rays, we use the two radioactive elements, mostly cesium and cobalt 60. And in high energy X-rays, that is the linear accelerator, we go up to energy in megavoltage, like 4 to 21 megavoltage, where this kilovoltage are used mostly for the surface treatment like the skin cancers. This megavoltage energy are used mostly for the treating the deeper tumors. So you can say there are X-ray and gamma rays. Gamma rays are delivered from cesium and cobalt. The different machines are there. I will be showing. The X-rays are delivered by a linear accelerator, and one machine is there, something called tomotherapy and CyberKnife. Then comes the particle beam, which is delivered through the proton, carbon, and neutrons. This is a basic X-ray tube which generates which has a cathode and an anode, and the X-ray beams are ejected. And this in a surface energy in kilovoltage range, this machine comes in contact of the patient in the skin tumors, and it treats the disease right on the area of interest. But when we come to a telecobalt gamma ray, there is a cobalt radioactive source. It is contained inside a radiotherapy chamber, which is made up of lead, so that radiation doesn't come out of it. But when it comes to a treatment time, this source moves to this area, and the radiation is ejected here. And after the treatment is over, again it goes back into the this sealed container. So there are two types of machine. One is this Bhavatron, which we are having at our hospital, and this is called Theratron. This is also available in some of the hospitals in India. So in both these equipments, there will be a radioactive telecobalt source which delivers the gamma rays to the patients. And how the source is placed, this is how before the machine is installed, we have to manually load the source into the machine from a radiation safe container by pushing through the help of a T-rod. So it moves into the radiation head of the equipment. Then there is another unit called gamma knife, and this is also used for the cobalt therapy treatment. And this is in like brain tumor cases, very small tumor cases in the brain. There are multiple radioactive telecobalt sources. Each one is a channel for the radiation dose to enter into the brain of the patient. And this is a very complex treatment, and is available at PGI, Postgraduate Institute Chandigarh, at near Chandigarh. So selected patients are delivered on this where it is required. So these are the two equipments in which telecobalt source is used. With the help of gamma rays, we treat the patient. Now coming to the X-rays. X-rays are delivered in the form of two machines. One is called the linear accelerator. So this linear accelerator, basically it has a two heads. The one is the treatment head, and another, this one is the CT scan head. So before we treat the patient, we take a CT scan on this every day, and that CT scan is matched with the planning CT scan which was taken on day one. Once it is perfectly matched, then the treatment is delivered. So now once the beam is switched on, then the X-rays are generated, and X-rays are delivered onto the patient. So this is a machine by Varian. This we will be getting at our new hospital coming up at Mullanpur, Mohali this year. And this is the existing machine by Electa at our Sangrur center. On this treatment unit, we are delivering the radiation therapy to the patient. Here also you can see this is the treatment head from which radiation comes, and this is the CT scan head through which we take the CT scan of the patient. how the linear accelerator functions? It has a this X-ray generating tube, which and the microwaves that propagates the energy, and when it comes to the treatment head, the energy is escalated into megavolt range, and it delivers the patient. And it has multiple MLCs, which each one is called leaf. You can see there are around 80 pairs. In this, there are 80, and here also 80. 160 are there. These are the leaves of made up of lead or tungsten through which radiation cannot come. That acts as a blocker of radiation, and this is the opening area through which radiation comes. And when delivering radiation, these units move in one axis like this horizontally. So wherever the areas will be open, radiation will be coming. Wherever the radiation areas are closed, there won't be any radiation. This complex mechanism is used for the planning part of IMRT and IGRT. So now coming to the other unit of X-rays, this is a tomotherapy. What is the basic difference between the linear accelerator? In the linear accelerator, you can see the machine is fixed. Only this couch is moves. The couch can move in 6 dimensionally. It has like translational movement, x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. Then rotational movement like yaw, pitch, and roll. But the machine moves only in one axis. Machine can rotate 360 degree around this couch. But in this tomotherapy, what happens? This machine rotates like this. Simultaneously, this couch also goes inside and comes outside. So we have much further degrees of freedom to plan a patient, where you can spare the more normal organs, delivering the higher dose to a target organ. You can see the radiation is on like this, and this radiation unit moves inside in a circular helical manner, and this couch simultaneously can translate into and outside while the beam is on. So this is called tomotherapy. Then another equipment is called CyberKnife. This is basically a robotic arm. You can see this arm is a robotic arm. It has our shoulder joint. It has 6 degrees of freedom. It can rotate anywhere across the body. So wherever the treatment area of interest is there, it will focus right on there. It is mostly helpful for moving tumors, like a long tumor which moves with our breathing pattern. So this can follow or track the tumor and deliver the beam when the tumor is moving. For a moving organ, this is helpful. For fixed organ, the other previous machines are helpful. So then this is what is called for the moving organs, what I am talking about. We have something called respiratory getting also. In this getting, we keep an infrared camera like this, and this is an infrared detector. You can see a very small one kept on the chest of the body. This camera detects the movement of this infrared infrared signal which is put on the body, how this is moving along with the breath, and following this, the radiation is planned accordingly, and the patient also can see his breathing pattern. There are 2 types. One is the patient is breathing, the other one is by the holding the breath in the deep inspiration. So then comes the something called volumetric arc therapy, in which the machine continuously rotates while the radiation is on. So this is called volumetric arc therapy. The IMRT can be delivered by the static IMRT or the volumetric IMRT. In static IMRT, we deliver the radiation with some 5 angles or some 7 angles, fixed angles. But in volumetric therapy, we continuously the machine rotates and continuously the beam is on throughout the delivery part. So this is called image guided radiation therapy, where you can see we are focusing our radiation only to the target organ, which is in the center, and this is the urinary bladder, this is the rectum through which our stool passes, this is the urinary bladder through which the urine passes. We are sparing the rectum and the urinary bladder and the small intestine which is above, while delivering the radiation to the target organ. So these are very complicated treatment. You can see this is also a liver tumor we are radiating here, very small one. So before delivering this tumor, we have to match it perfectly so that we are not hitting at a wrong place. How the matching is done, this is how there are 2 CT scan you can see. One is this one on the taken on day of planning. This is on the day of delivery. We are fusing both of them before we deliver the treatment. So then in the recent world, the new concept is coming is a MR-Linac. The earlier linear accelerator which I showed works on the principle of X-rays. This linear accelerator works on the principle of MRI. So in MRI, why it is used to delineate the soft tissue, MRI plays a much better role in compared to a CT scan. So the MR linear accelerator we will be getting in our new center at Mohali, Mullanpur. So this is in a very costly and higher end equipment in the today's world. So now coming, that is all over about the external radiation. When coming to brachytherapy part, we have intracavitary. Brachytherapy is the internal radiation. We place a radioactive source inside the patient body to deliver the treatment, and it has three modalities like intracavitary, interstitial, and mold therapy. So brachytherapy can be again preloading, afterloading, and remote afterloading. So in the present generation, we are using the remote afterloading, means this is basically a computerized planning system. So how it is done? You can see this is the brachytherapy equipments. This is the patient. We are inserting some equipments into the patient body, and we are connecting the both this machine and the patient through a connector. You can see a small tube like this. Then the radioactive source travel through this tube inside the patient body and stays there for some seconds or minutes, and it comes out once again. So the radioactive element used is mostly iridium 192. So these are the small pellets of a dimension of 2.5 millimeter, and it's embedded in a steel capsule, and that is welded into a steel wire, and which travels into the patient body, and it comes back after the treatment is over. So there are so many types of applicators which are placed in the patient body. These upper three are used for mostly the breast cancer brachytherapy. The lower down ones are used for the cervical or uterus cancer brachytherapy, and this is something interstitial brachytherapy, where there are multiple needles are inserted into the patient's body. You can see this is a breast cancer, and we have delivered so many needles into the tumor. This is the tumor. Surrounding the tumor, we have put so many needles. Then we are taking a CT scan and planning and delivering the radiation therapy. These are the applicators which are also placed into the breast tissue, and this connector connects to the equipment before the treatment is delivered. Now something is intraoperative radiation therapy is also there. When the patient is in the operation theater after surgery, after the body is opened for a limited area where radiation is to be delivered, the one equipment is there, and that comes in contact with the area of interest and delivers the radiation. This was all the generation of X-ray based radiation. Now coming to particulate radiation, we have moved from X-ray to electron, then pion, then proton, neutron, and carbon. So proton and carbon ion are the recent developments which are used in the radiation therapy. These are very developed equipments present in a few of the institutes across the world. So what is the difference between a X-ray based radiation therapy and ion beam based radiation therapy? In X-ray radiation therapy, you can see the X-ray travels so much distance, and all this area gets some amount of radiation. Where all the X-rays are colliding from different angles, the center gets the high dose naturally. This is the treatment area of interest. But all the surrounding areas also getting some form of radiation, which is not required. But in a proton beam or carbon ion beam radiation, the radiation is delivered exactly at the area of interest where the surrounding tissues are spared. So that is the benefit of proton beam. So why it happens? Because there is something called Bragg peak theory. In X-ray, it deposits its energies like this. In the green line, you can see the highest energy is deposited at the region where it is colliding the body, and as it goes down into depth of say 0 centimeter to 30 centimeter, still there is some amount of X-rays from 100% to 20%. X-rays getting our body is getting. But when you talk about proton and neutron, say till the depth of 15 centimeter, there was no radiation or very minimal radiation, 60%, and after the 15 to 25 centimeter, in this the most of the energy is 100% radiation is delivered. This is the benefit of proton therapy. So when it is used, because it is used in very critical organs, like when this kidney is nearby and the target organ is close by, then we give this proton therapy. You can see the radiation is exactly limited to the area of interest, but in X-ray therapy, you see the scattered dose is distributed in across distant organs also. So here is also in the same thing. This is a proton therapy. You can see how much precisely it is localized to the area of interest. But in a X-ray based radiation therapy, you see the normal brain also getting the radiation in a lower dose gradient. Same thing while come to a spinal cord tumor. Spinal cord is again a very sensitive tumor. In this right side is a proton therapy. You can see the radiation is limited to the area of interest, but the left side you can see is a X-ray based therapy. The entire body is getting some dose, like this kidneys, both kidneys, liver and lung. They are also getting some dose of radiation while delivering to a high dose to the spinal tumor. The carbon ion is much better than proton in terms of this is the black line is of the dose distribution of proton, and the red one is the dose distribution of carbon ion. You can see the carbon ion has a very sharp gradient, but proton has a slow slight slope is there. So carbon ion dose distribution is more precise in compared to proton. How the proton beam is generated, there is a cyclotron which generates the proton, and this proton is transmitted across 4 bunkers. So there will be 4 machines, 1, 2 and 3, 4. All 4 machines can deliver through a radiation by a proton from a single generator. This is how the proton setup looks, to have a brief idea to all of you. And these are all this is the cyclotron where proton is generated and transmitted to the treatment bunkers where radiation is delivered. So this is the treatment unit, how a proton treatment unit looks. This is the machine where proton will be coming and the patient will be lying here. It will be kept like a plate, and it's coming onto the beam and will be delivered here. This is another proton unit. This is placed at the one proton unit has come up at Apollo Hospital, Chennai. This is the one unit they are having at Chennai Apollo to deliver the proton therapy. And this is the carbon ion therapy. This is not available in India. Hardly few centers across world have the carbon ion therapy, but we are looking forward to have a carbon ion setup at our center Mohali in future. So these are the in the world map where the proton and carbon ion therapies are available. You can see the much of the part of US and majority in Japan where the carbon ion and proton are available. Rest of the countries doesn't have much equipments. In India, you can see one is showing in the Chennai for the Apollo proton unit. So this is the unit showing Apollo Proton Center, and these are the centers in which will be planned for coming up. Like our Tata Memorial Hospital, Bombay is also getting a proton center. It is under construction phase, and maybe in another 1 year it will be starting. So this was my brief about the radiation oncology part, and of the before moving into the artificial intelligence. So I think I have covered a little, I have given a brief idea how the radiation oncology unit functions and what are the different modalities of radiation, how it is generated and how it is treated to the patient. So the radiation oncology basically works with a image. The image is captured in the form of CT scan or MRI, and in that image the area of interest is defined, which is the target area tumor to be radiated and what are the normal areas to be spared. After that is defined, the computer generates a plan, and the plan is generated in the multiple form like for the gamma rays and X-rays, and it is delivered through different machines which I showed you recently. Now coming to the artificial intelligence part of radiation oncology. So in radiation oncology, the how we need the artificial intelligence. First, I will brief out before going to the treatment. We have something called screening. So screening, how it helps. We have 130 crores people in India. We cannot say which one patient is having cancer and which patient is not having cancer. So there are screening modalities are available for different sites like head and neck cancer, breast cancer, and cervix cancer. Patient comes to us and they gets itself screened whether they are having any cancer or not. So this screening, for the screening also artificial intelligence can play a major role. So this mammography is a brief about the screening for the breast cancer. So how the mammography is function, it is basically X-ray. It takes a X-ray of the breast tissue, and with the images, the radiologist defined whether the cancer is there or cancer is not there. But this is basically the image. It is a virtual diagnosis. It's not a perfect diagnosis. If we diagnose something cancer, if we doubt cancer is there, then we take a little tissue from it, which we called a biopsy. On the tissue in the microscope, we see the cancer cells are present or not present. So many times the results are.
Your screen is not shared. Whether you're giving
Okay.
some slide.
Okay, ma'am. I will start sharing again. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
So is it coming now, ma'am?
Yes, it's
okay,
visible, sir.
So I was talking about the screening part. In cancer screening, we use a modality called mammography. This is used for breast cancer screening. And in this what happens, mammography, we take a X-ray of the breast tissue, both the breast, in the X-ray, the radiologist then defines the calcification, which micro calcification or macro calcification, which is see whether that is a significant to cancer or there is no cancer. If we doubt a cancer on the mammography, then we take a biopsy of that area. Biopsy is basically a tissue taken from with the help of a needle from that area, and that tissue is seen on microscope whether cancer cells are present or not present. So on mammography, radiologically, if we say somebody cancer is present, many times when we take a biopsy, we don't say cancer cell, we don't see a cancer cell in that. So in mammography gives a false positive result. So for that, usually the what is the standard guideline? Every year after at the age of 40, after the age of 40 year, every year annual mammogram has to be done for the ladies to screen the breast cancer. So if we go on doing like this, we will be ending with so many false positive results and so many this is a nice paper presented in NEJM, New England Journal of Medicine, showing many times we 22% times in mammography and 49% type in clinical examination, we end up showing false positive results, which is a burden to the country. So to reduce this, we need the help of artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence work, we feed into the computer multiple mammography images of the cancer positive patients, and based on this library images, when we take a new mammography scan, the computer can detect automatically whether it is a cancer mammogram or it is a non-cancer mammogram. So this is how it is used for the mammography, and so many algorithms are playing a role in that, like the fractal dimension analysis and dogs and rabbit clustering algorithm, which comes into play in mammography. Then in prognosis, what is prognosis? Prognosis means how many years the patient is going to live if he is diagnosed with cancer. After the cancer patient is treated, many times patient fails loco-regionally, means where the cancer was present at the same area the tumor recurs, or in a metastatic failure if the cancer comes in a different area, that is metastasis. So based on these probabilities, we can predict whether a patient is going to behave well after treatment or not behave well after the treatment. So this is a nice paper by Journal of Medical Imaging showing long X challenge for computerized long module classification. So you can see there are two curves, and there are 70 long nodules were taken, and the radiologists were asked to define based on the size of the tumor whether it is a cancer or non-cancer, and similarly with the help of artificial intelligence, 10 computer algorithms were generated which predicted whether the cancer or it is non-cancer. So the deep black line you can see the radiologist defined line, and there are two algorithms by the computer showing is a better diagnosis compared to the radiologist naked eye, showing the cancer is present with this size of the lung tumor. Then similarly, the liver tumors also, we can predict the survivability for liver tumor. There are how the artificial intelligence plays a role. There are so many layers of computerized connections, algorithms, and this is where the feeding layer, input layer, and this is the output layer, where the computer gives us a output saying whether the prognosis patient will behave well or it won't behave well. You can see there were 6 different types of algorithms were used, and in each one this green line was a computerized based prediction, and this red one was a human TNM staging which is used in computer that based prediction. And in all these modality modules, the artificial intelligence prognostic prediction was much better compared to the human presentation. So in radiation oncology, how the machine learning or deep learning plays a role in frontiers in oncology. This is a nice paper showing the different steps of radiation, which I just now briefed out: the patient assessment, simulation, treatment planning, and delivery, then follow up. In every step, we need the help of artificial intelligence to help the doctor in quickly planning and delivering the treatment. So I will touch upon the each areas to a minimal extent to give you an idea how it plays to work. So we are working with mainly 5 areas: image acquisition and segmentation, then image registration, then planning and treatment delivery. In image acquisition, how say artificial intelligence is required? You know there are two types of images. One is CT scan and one is MRI. CT scan is basically exposes to a patient to radiation. In MRI there is no radiation. So people are now working to generate a synthetic CT from a MR image. So this is what deep embedded convolutional neural network for synthesizing CT image from a T1 weighted MR image. So this is here you can see this is a MRI was taken, and this is the synthetic CT scan generated from the MRI, and this is the original CT scan taken with the help of a CT machine. It is the looks are almost similar. This is the original CT scan. Then this is a synthesized CT from a MRI. The images are perfectly matching. So if this can be done, it will be a major help of sparing the patient to unnecessary radiation exposure through CT scans. Then comes the role of tumor and organ at risk segmentation. What is segmentation? Segmentation means we define the areas like I showed in my previous slide. We draw the tumor area and we draw the normal areas. So this drawing can be done, if it can be done automatically by the computer, it will spare a lot of time of the doctor. I being a radiation oncologist, I need to sit at least 4 hours for a single patient to plan the areas. So in my department, we are planning at least 10 patients a day, and at least with me, the waiting list is now 50 patients. So we can maximum in a day we can plan 2 to 3 patients. We can define the tumor and target and the normal areas. So if there will be algorithms, computerized based algorithms with us, we can automatically draw the areas. That will help spare a lot of time of the doctor, and he can just correct the areas whatever computer has defined, whether it is okay or not okay. So people have tried different algorithms like similarity and truth estimation, propagation segmentation, which is called STEPS, and another one is Staple. And as the STEPS algorithm shows a better performance than the Staple algorithm in this paper. So you can see the red, the blue line is the manually drawn. This is the spinal cord. Spinal cord. The doctor has drawn this blue line is being drawn by a radiation oncologist, and the red line is drawn by the STEPS algorithm, and the green line is drawn by the Staple algorithm. You can see the red one performs better, almost nearly same like the blue one compared to the green. So the STEPS algorithm functions better than the Staple one. This is another form of evaluation, drawing the areas. This is a lung tumor. The lung has been drawn by a computerized system and by the manual system. You can see the yellow line perfectly matches with the red line compared to the blue line. So the yellow line is the outperforms the blue one. These both ones are the computer based, and the red one was the human based. This same one with for the pelvis tumors also. This is for the segmentation of the target. Then is something called image registration. What is image registration? Like I told before, we deliver a radiation delivery, we take the CT scan on machine, we match the CT scan on the day one CT which was taken during the planning part. We fuse both of my images, and after perfectly matched, the radiation is delivered. Similarly, in planning part also, we take sometime the help of MRI and CT, both needs to be fused, and the patient position are many times different. In CT scan where the patient is lying, in MRI how the patient is laid are absolutely different. While we match it manually, we face a lot of difficulty. The images doesn't match exactly. So there we need the help of computer-based algorithms to match the CT scan and MRIs to give an output image, and this is called image registration, and artificial intelligence has a major role in this image registration. Now coming to the radiation planning. So there are many automated planning system to generate a new plan. So why we need a artificial intelligence in planning? Because again the same thing, like a doctor defines the tumor and the normal organ, I take at least 4 hours to define a particular patient. Similarly, to generate a plan for a patient, it again takes 4 to 6 hours. So in a day you can maximum plan, we can generate 2 plans for a patient, but where our patient load is at least 7 to 8%, we are taking CT scan, but we are able to generate a plan for only 2 patients, because the computer based algorithm takes so much time to run on the system to generate a perfect plan. So how the artificial intelligence will play a role? If we are suppose delivering the head and neck radiation to 1,000 of patients over a year, and we can save those 1,000 plans in the our computer system, and when we take a new patient scan, it will the computer will automatically detect which plan of the earlier patient fitting best into this new patient, so that the same voxel based plan will be generated for the new patient quickly in a less amount of time compared to the standard things. So this automated voxel based optimization converts predicted dose distribution into a complete treatment plan. Then clinical decision also plays a major role in radiation treatment planning, data driven machine learning for a patient specific, which dosimetry, what happens after the plan is generated, it gives a DVH, we call it dose volume histogram, showing the what area is getting how much dose, like the lungs, liver, heart, how much dose each organ is getting, and which plan we can accept easily. So if we have a library of thousand or lakh of plans, we can easily accept the new plan which is fitting into the best of the previous plans. So this is a just a outline I can show you. This is a long tumor, very small tumor of millimeter size, which we are treating. Two plans are generated in this plan. In this plan, we have asked the computer to give very less dose to the chest wall, and it can give a higher dose to the heart. So that is the patient 92. You see the chest wall, it is getting a less dose, and heart is getting a higher dose. But in the other one, we have asked the computer to spare the heart to a much extent and to give a higher dose to the chest wall. Then the radiation delivery also, we need artificial intelligence. We have robotic patient positioning systems for the maskless head and neck cancer therapy. I had shown you earlier to immobilize a patient, we place a thermoplastic mask on the patient body, which is very cumbersome, and sometimes patients are not comfortable with that. So now robotic patient positioning systems are coming for maskless radiation therapy, where the artificial intelligence has a role in this. So this is how the patient is positioned, and the cameras are there and the detectors are below. It can detect the patient, whether the patient is moving or not moving, and if the patient is not moving, then only the radiation beam will be on to deliver the target area. So there are while the radiation on, there are intra and interfraction movements also, like for the long tumors, and those can also be minimized with the help of artificial intelligence. This is a nice paper briefing about this. So these were the few evidences how artificial intelligence plays a role. And now to brief out about artificial intelligence, it was coined by 1956 by the pioneer John McCarthy, and it is Borden defined artificial intelligence as a science whose purpose is to make machines perform tasks better compared to the human intelligence. Basically, artificial intelligence is a very broad term. The subunits comes a machine learning, and under that comes a deep learning, and it functions basically with the help of a convolutional neural network. This is a kind of human brain where we have neurons in place of neurons. There are computer-based connections, and based on that, it helps the human to perform better. So here you can see this is the eye and this is the optic nerve where our signal goes and we can see a object. So and this is the area which we need to radiate the green region. So when we are radiating this green area, you can see the optic nerve is very close by, and if that gets radiation, then our vision will be gone. So in these cases, the artificial intelligence picks up the one of the best plans which was delivered to any one of the older patient, and based on that we generate a similar plan to deliver to a new patient. You can see in the graph the role of artificial intelligence has come up after mostly 2015. In last 5 to 7 years, it has grown up tremendously. Now multiple papers are available on this. So I will come to a little of the theoretical part. So much images I have shown till now. So what is deep learning? Deep learning describes a set of computational models composed of multiple layers of data processing, which makes it possible to learn by representing the data through several layers of abstraction. So basically it is a form of multiple layers of computational data which helps us in generating a new plan. So by automatically refining their internal parameters via a back propagation algorithm, it gives a new plan for a new patient. That is called deep learning. In machine learning, it performs its performance on the task. So Michael proposed the learning in terms of 3 parameters, namely T, P, and E. A computer program is said to learn from experience E with respect to some class of task T and performance measure P. If it performs on the task in T is measured by P and improves with experience E. This is the basically definition of machine learning. In a simpler terms, the computer has been given a experience, means multiple previous plans are fed into the computer, and when a new task T is given, it gives a perfect planning which is based on the previous experiences, and it is considered as the new planning or performance P. So that can be a supervised or unsupervised, and reinforcement or transfer learning. There are 4 types of machine learning on this. What is deep neural network? Deep neural network is the single unit is called a perceptron, is one of the first approach to conceptualize data directly from the environment. It is an artificial neuron. Basically, deep neural network is artificial neuron. What is neuron? Neuron is a cell in the brain tissue. How it functions? In computer, there are this brain tissue like network is made. So this is called artificial deep neural network, and it simulates the transfer of information through a human brain neuron. So there are nodes which receive the inputs called synapses, and there are areas which sums of them to provide an activation area called axon, and it is passes down this axon to a nonlinear function called activation or transfer function to give an output signal. So it can be a multi-layer neural network or DNNs or multi-layer perceptron. So this is a human neuron which functions in brain, and this is how a computerized neuron. These are the inputs, and this is a synthetic adaptive function, and it gives the output in terms of gamma. And these are multiple hidden layers in between the network, input layer and the output layer. So there are different network architectural commonly used in the deep learning. One is supervised, one is unsupervised. So I will briefly describe each one of them. One DNN is constitutes all neurons of the layer I that are connected to the all neurons of the next layer. So in a recurrent neural network, is suitable for processing of temporally different dependent information. What is to be this kept in mind the information of previously processed data to help the network predict the succeeding new data. So this is called a recurrent neural network. And in a there is something called autoencoder. It is a very smaller unit of the previous one, composed of hidden layers of smaller size than the input one, for identifying a latent dominant structure of reduced size with respect to the input signal. And it has multiple types like the stacked deionizing and sparse and variational one. Then something is called Boltzmann machine learning. This is again comes in the unsupervised learning. This is a bidirectional function. In this, the neuron functions in either way. The earlier ones in given from a one layer, like input to output, it can function both ways, from input to output and output to input. It can generate new inputs related during the learning, and all these neurons are connected to each other. This is called Boltzmann machine. You in the drawings it is shown very nicely. Like in this Boltzmann, you can see it is multiple connections. Yellow is connected to green, and green is also back connected to yellow. Comes the deep belief network, and essentially are essays in which the encoding layers are replaced by Boltzmann ones. Only the two deepest layers have bidirectional connections. It is also unsupervised manner, and this is also another form of unsupervised network. And the finally, which is used in our real world practice, is convolutional neural network. In this convolutional neural network, each neuron's output of a given layer is connected to the input node of the every neuron in the succeeding layer, and the neurons of the same layer are completely independent of each other. This is how a convolutional neural network. This is like a human brain which is placed inside a computer, and it enables the computer to think on its own based on the previous plans to give a new plan for a new patient to be delivered in radiation oncology department. So this is the how the convolutional network functions. You can see this is the patient's image. It has been splitted into different, and again the computer fuses all this to give a perfect image. So I have tried to simplify in a way whatever possible for me to explain the today's audience, and this completes my part on artificial intelligence. So now I would like to know if anybody wants to ask anything or any discussion part on the topic.
Thank you, Dr. Tapas. Any question from participants? You can also type in the chat box.
Yes, I am just opening that.
If any question, you can ask. Let me read. That's सामने visible नहीं है question.
Yes, Ashish, I can see something you want to ask.
one question is how we differentiate fibrosis and tumor of breast.
Yes. So this Subhita is asking how we differentiate fibrosis and tumor of breast. See, it's again the same thing. We first we take a mammography. In the mammography, we have scorings like BI-RADS scoring. You can see on internet also Google what is BI-RADS. We have 1 to 6 score. So till 1 to 3, we say it is not a tumor. If the score is 4 or 5, then it is doubtful. If score is 6, then there is 100% malignancy is there. So if we doubt a score of 4, 5 or 6, then we take a smaller biopsy from that area, and that shows the tumor, whether the tumor is there or not there. And if it will fibrosis, on that biopsy also we will see there is no tumor. We are seeing only collagenous tissues. Then we diagnose it is a fibrosis. It is not a tumor. Is that okay for you to differentiate a fibrosis from breast? Okay, thanks.
So I think
I am trying to open that link.
This is for the attendance for the participants.
Yes.
This link is for the attendance.
Okay.
Sir, one question is how many times a RT can be given to stage 4?
How many times RT can be given to a stage 4? Yes, yes, Dr. Chandran, radiation is usually planned for a settings of minimum 25 to 35, depending on the sites. Like for a uterus or cervix cancer, we give 25 settings of radiation, and for head and neck cancers, we give 30 settings of radiation. So in a week of 7 days, we give radiation for 5 days, Monday to Friday. Saturday, Sunday is a off. We do not deliver radiation because 2 days the normal body takes to recover the areas. So if we consider a 25 settings of radiation, then naturally we will take 5 weeks to deliver. If we consider a 30 settings of radiation, we will take 6 to 7 weeks to deliver. Sometimes machine goes down for a week, or the patient also becomes sick. He doesn't come up for a week, then it adds up further 1 week. So for an entire treatment duration, we take 1 month to 1.5 months, you can say, to complete.
Any more question? Sir, participants have asked for the PPT. We have, although recording the session, still participants ask for PPT. If you are comfortable, please mail me.
I will share
okay.
it. I will mail it to your mail ID, and you can further pass it down.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So no more question, I think, in the chat box also. There is one more question. What are the side effects of immunotherapy for stage 4 cancer?
Yes, this is a nice question. See, immunotherapy is again a very broad term and very recent term. A few of the people are only aware of this, unless it is a doctor or a oncologist, people know, or somebody who had a cancer in his family, then only he will be uttering this term immunotherapy. So immunotherapy is again very costly. One single dose costs almost 2 to 2.5 lakhs in today's world, and it has not yet easily approachable to the patient. And immunotherapy is now newly coming up in cancer patient, and combining when it comes to a radiation therapy. Now we are exploring the options like I told you, proton therapy and the carbon ion therapy, where the immunotherapy in combination with proton therapy, how it plays a stage 4 malignancies cancer, it plays a role. We are working on that. And of course, the immunotherapy results are very good. Like you are asking, in stage 4, it has dramatic results. The stage 4 means usually it is a metastatic cancer, where we say the disease has spread all over the body. And in that, immunotherapy is a kind of lock and key. It goes and sits on the particular tumor where it is caused the cancer, and it kills there. So it has a very good dramatic result. But side effects are also equally promising, and many side effects, but they can be controlled through the medical science. Side effect is not a feature. All the drugs are delivered within the reasonable side effects. After multiple clinical trials, they are coming into market. So nothing to worry for side effects, but the cost factor is the worry before coming to patient. Yes, you have rightly told, it is a metastatic patient, stage 4. There only the immunotherapy is delivered.
Any other question? So I'm not seeing any more questions. So yes, we can end the session here. Thank you so much, Dr. Tapas, for sparing your time. I know your schedule is very busy. We have to So I want to tell the participants that hospital at Sangrur, I have
Yes.
also visited. It's very good hospital. Latest equipments are there, and sir is
Yes.
dedicating fully for this hospital. So that's
I am
very
sure
good.
most of the participant here are across the country, I think. So whoever
Yes.
will be nearby area, they can visit our hospital. This is a government hospital. We are providing treatment at very nominal charges as compared to the corporate world. And like Vanita is asking again, the cost factor is a worry. So this cost factor will come down when the patient is coming to a unit like our hospital, where we are not we are giving at a discount rate to the chemotherapy and to the immunotherapy part also. At a much lesser cost people will be getting. Thank you, madam.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Tapas, for just we have the visual of the hospital shown to the participants, equipped with the latest machines and providing the facility to the nearby at lower cost. So earlier there was a train from Punjab to Rajasthan that was known as the cancer train. It starts from Bathinda. So no
Yes,
longer it's like the scenario is like this because this hospital is providing the latest equipment at very low cost for the treatment of the patients. So patients are very safe under Dr. Tapas. He's dedicatedly doing, means we can say day and night he's working, and he established very good hospital. So I visited it. So I must appreciate Dr. Tapas' effort. So whenever we want to have a visit over there for our students, he never take us to the each and every equipment and explain. He always spare the time. So very thankful, Dr. Tapas, for your efforts. All the time when we ask you for any of this type of visits and help and research work. So very
absolutely.
nice efforts from
We are
your side.
always there,
Thank you so
madam,
much,
for you.
sir.
Thank you, madam, for your sweet appreciation. We are always there for your help.
Sir, one question is there. Somebody is asking about the anti-cancer tablets.
Yes. So, Dr. Chandran, again, you are touching something related to the previous question, like immunotherapy. These are the targeted therapies which you are asking about, the cancer tablets. These are again the chemotherapy tablets. They are coming in the form of tablets because patient need not come to the hospital. We prescribe the tablets for a month or 2 months, and he can continue at home. And these are targeted therapies. Targeted means the cancer cell has multiple receptors on its nucleus or on the cell membrane, and these medicines are targeted to those receptors. What is a receptor? In that receptor, there are many growth hormones in our body. When the growth hormone sits on that receptor, it takes to the proliferation of the cancer cell. So before that growth hormone sits on that receptor, if we put a blocker in its place, then that hormone won't come in contact with the receptor and there will be no growth of the cancer cell. So these blockers are now available in the form of these tablets, which we call the targeted therapy. So these are all molecular level of malignancy. These are all evolving subjects, mostly used for the stage 4 malignancies, and I can predict in another 5-10 years multiple drugs are going to come, and we are expecting the stage 4 metastasis disease should also, a day should come when we can say a metastasis patient will also be curable. But at today's time, when somebody asks us, can a metastatic patient be curable, we very sadly we have to say no, our hands are closed, we cannot cure this patient. But I think in 10 years down the line, these targeted therapies and this immunotherapy will change the treatment of cancer therapy.
Sir Tapas sir, I want to say Dr. M. Chandran is MBBS by profession. I have checked from Atal portal. So he's the only doctor who is attending this course.
Okay, madam. So
In
nice.
whole parties.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is my,
If I'm
madam,
not
my.
wrong, Dr. Chandran can unmute because I've just checked the portal few days back. So if I'm
Yes,
not wrong, Dr. Chandran can directly talk to Dr. Tapas because
yes,
both
doctor.
of you are from same profession basically.
Yes, doctor, you can speak.
So we have given the facility to unmute. So Dr. Chandran can speak directly, no issues.
Madam, I am the mechanical engineer. I did a PhD in cancer area, and my wife is suffering from the stage 4 cancer. So that's why I put some of the questions related to stage 4.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. ME Master in Thermal Engineering and PhD in Cryogenic Engineering, where I did some part of design tools for cancer surgery. So that's why I'm very much interested in the cancer area. Moreover, my wife is suffering from cancer for 7 years from 2014 onwards. So she's under treatment from 2014 onwards. Now she's in stage board. Initially in 2014 itself, she's under treatment. She's taking the tablets, cancer tablets, Sodisto and Valdes. That's why I put some of the. I'm not a MBBS doctor. I'm Dr. Plastic. Okay.
Okay, maybe I may be wrong. I've got little information from the portal, so maybe. Okay. Sorry, Dr. Chandran. So misunderstanding के लिए I'm sorry for that. So any other question? We can close the session. Any other question from any participant? So thank you so much, Dr. Tapas, once again. No more questions, no more So thank you so much, sir, for spending your time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Nice. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So now we are going to have some. Yes.
Should I close the session, ma'am, from my end?
Yes, sir. You can close the session. I'm just making announcement for the participants regarding attendance and other things.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, there's an announcement for the participants. Now we are going to have hands-on on Python by one of our research scholars, right? So stay connected. So don't leave this session. So we are continuing this session for next hands-on. So in a moment, we are going to have our research scholar with us for the hands-on, because it was from the participant side request that you should have more hands-on. So we have arranged for that. So just stay connected for this. Okay.
Hello.
Research scholar has joined. Suvita, you can start.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suvita. I'm a research scholar at the Sant Longowal Institute of Engineering and Technology. My department is computer science. And basically, in a few days, you all heard about the optimization of hyper parameters and all. And you also saw the one platform, which one is called Jupyter. And a ma'am explained well on the Jupyter how the deep learning is working and all. Today I will show you another platform on which you can code the Python code on the other platform that is called Spider. Okay. Basically, there is a difference between the Jupyter and the Spider. In a Jupyter, we have a cells, and in cell you can write your code and you can then run the code. But for this, there are some things missing which are available in Spider. The first thing is all the program is always saved in the C drive, and if you have to change the drive, then you have to a lot of things to do to change the drive from C to D, C drive to other drive. And another thing is that for the debugging, if we want to debug line by line and we want to see the variable values and other things, which is not available in Jupyter. So here, this window, all participants, my window is visible. Anyone can answer?
Yes, ma'am. This one is visual.
This one is the Spider, and the Python version is 3.6. Here you see the lot of option we have, and this window is similar to other coding windows like MATLAB, C++, and other IDE which were earlier used. And before starting from the spider, I want to mention few things like what are the hyperparameter, why we want to optimize these, what is feature selection and why we want the feature selection and what are the impact. From the coding view, I also show the what is the impact of hyperparameter tuning or the feature selection. And before that, I want to give some brief discussion on these topics: feature selection and the parameter tuning and the feature selection. Okay, the topic is feature selection and hyperparameter tuning is classified using meta-heuristic optimization algorithm. In the morning session, the sir has described the gradient descent method, which is another optimization, another algorithm to find the hyperparameter values. But there is a disadvantage in the using gradient descent, and because gradient descent can only find the one value at a one time, and it may be optimal or may not. But in meta-heuristic optimization, there is a several agents, or we can say if we want to find a value, then there are several factors that find a optimal value in the particular search space. Then uh, first is what is the feature selection. Basically, the searching of a optimal set of features from the original set is called a feature selection. Uh, in the a data set, there are several type of features. Maybe features can be around 2000, 1200, maybe also many, there are many numbers. And maybe all features not relevant, or maybe not, may some features are repeated, and repeated or irrelevant may impact the classification accuracy. And the other problem with the feature selection problem is that a feature selection problem is considered as a NP-hard combinatorial, because if we have n number of features, then we have multiple combination of features to select which features are relevant and more informative among all the features. And the evaluation of all possible feature subset, pairing of features and combination and selecting the features from one by one is very costly in the computational complexity and in the response time. So optimal feature subset is very a challenging task. Then what are the need behind the feature selection? First, we have to remove irrelevant data, the data which doesn't play any role in the classification task. And for increasing the predictive accuracy of the learned model, the irrelevant or the repeated data also increase the computational complexity or may have effect on the accuracy of the learning model. And if we remove those features, then the learning efficiency, also the storage to store that particular data, and computational cost also improve. The last one is complexity. The model complexity also decrease, and the understanding of model and the data also improve. The next is a example. What are the features and what are the instances that we used in the terms for the feature selection? Generally, the columns of a table in which the data set is fed is called as features, and the rows are called as the instances. And these are the first row is the description about which column describe what features. There are four main steps to select a particular features or subset of features. We set the original feature to generate the subset, and the subset evaluated based on the some classification algorithm or based on some formula. Then we again check if the subset is okay based on the stopping criteria. Maybe it's a number of iteration, maybe it's the error that can be taken, or maybe other things. And if the feature subset doesn't complete the stopping criteria, then again we generate some other subsets, and then again we evaluate. This will continue till the time stopping criteria not satisfied. After that, if the stopping criteria satisfied, then we go for the result validation. Is the actual selected subsets of the features are okay or not? There are three types of feature selection method which are present currently. First is filter, second is the wrapper, and third is the hybrid method. In the filter method, in this method, we directly select the feature subset based on a mathematical. Classification based those features. This method is fast, but there is no guarantee that the selected features are good enough to improve the classification. The another method is called wrapper method. In this complete data set is fed into the algorithm. There is a small feature subset algorithm. Here, the feature subset on this place we use the meta heuristic optimization algorithm. That algorithm selects some feature subset and fed to the classifier. Then classifier gives the result and we evaluation. If the result satisfies, then we at last give the selected features to the classifier. And the hybrid method is a combination of both the filter method and the wrapper method. First, we select features with the help of filter method, maybe with the correlation or maybe with the information gain, and then we fed the selected features to the wrapper method. Then this is a simple diagram how classifier works. We already know what is the ML in the earlier session. The sir explained what is the machine learning and what is the classifier. Generally, classifier automatically improve the learning with the help of the data which we fed. First, the data is divided into training or testing. In the training phase, the classifier build a model which called as a classification model, and the testing data tested on that classification model, and they give the classification result. And in the classifier, there are some parameters, some called hyperparameters. Basically, hyperparameters have impact on the classification task, and these are set with manually or heuristic, and these are tuned during the cross validation phase. And for example, in a k nearest neighbor classifier, there is a k value which we can see in the next slide. Initially, the green one is a class B values, and A instances related to class A. Then when we train the model on those sets, after that unknown data arises, then we have to classify that which class does this belong, to class A or to class B. So we decide the value of k. If the k is 3, then from the unknown value we find the nearest. So that why its name is KNN, k nearest neighbor. It's fine. It searches the nearest 3 neighbors. Why? Because the k value is 3, and the majority of neighbor which belongs to either class A or B, the unknown data is classified to that class. For example, in this case, if the k value is 3, then the nearest neighbors are one neighbor from the red class A, and other two are from class B. So the unknown data is classified into class B. If we increase the neighbors, to the 5 or a 6, then what happen? If we increase this circle to bigger one, then what happen? There are three values from the class A and the 2 values from the class B. Then this unknown data may be classified to class A. So basically, k value depends upon the what type of data we are fed into the classifier. So we have to tune the k value based on the data type. in general, if the class is even, if we have two classes, then the values of k should be odd number. So in this example, if the class have two value, class A or class B, the k is taken as a 3, but it is not granted that this is efficient value of k or a good value of k to describe all the unknown data to classify in class A or B. So before that, before the meta-heuristic optimization, how meta-heuristic optimization works, let's see the example. What is the effect of the k value on the classification? Here, in this, I have import some predefined libraries. If you don't find any of these libraries, just write in this window is called console window, in which you can see the computation, or you can write the command manually. And this is a variable explorer, or another is here you can see the plots if you draw any plots, and these are the files. And we can easily change the drive from any there. Currently my program is in a D drive. If we want to move into another drive, just write the path, or we can directly open from this side, file open, where the your code belongs. Then first, what we need to for the k nearest neighbor classification, the first we need the classifier. sklearn is a library. sklearn having the neighbors which import k nearest neighbor classifier. And then we need a repeated stratified fold, k fold, for the cross validation, and cross validation val score to find the cross validation values. Basically, what is cross validation? For if we first, for the classification, we divide the values in some parts, and suppose we divide the values in 5 parts. Every 5 parts may have different instance and same number of instances, or may have different number of instances. On the different number of parts, like 5 parts, KNN work separately, and after that we calculate the accuracy, and we got the mean. And the first thing here we do, the first we load the mat file. I have a mat file for the Parkinson disease. Parkinson disease, basically the disease which affect our motor tissues like speaking, hand movements or joint movements, such that. And we first load the data, and the park 195 22, it's have a 195 instances and 22 features. And we separate the training value and the label includes the class. It's the Parkinson this data has 2 class, label 0 and 1. Then we first define the model, which model we want to use. For this, we define here the k nearest neighbor classifier and the value of k, which we pass to this code. And this is the code for the evaluation of the model. Here we first make the makes the group, and then we find the cross validation score, and then we evaluate the mean here. The first this is the k value we want to pass. This is the 2 class problem. Then we can pass the value. Maybe we can also pass the even value, but in literature generally write that if the class has a even number of if the data has a even number of classes, then always choose a k value odd. So here first I select the k value 1, which pass in the model, and the model get here value, the value pass to this function. And after that, when the model is prepared, then training and the label, training data and the label data fed to the evaluation model, this function, and the data is divided into the 10 splits, 10-fold cross validation. And then after that, cross validation score is evaluated. So let's see what is the value if we pass k is equal to 1. It may take some time, but I already run, maybe it's around to 84.8, 0.84, 84. Now you see the score, the accuracy with the k value 1 is 84.8 or 0.8. If we describe in the value of hundreds, then 84.8, and if we in 0 or 1, then 0.8. If we change the value to maybe 3, then what is the value? Now you see, when we set the value 3, then accuracy affected, it goes from 84.8 to 84.6. We maybe set 5, 7, 9 or some other values, then maybe it's maybe improved or maybe decreased the accuracy. So then the meta-heuristic algorithms, which are optimization algorithm, plays important role in this hyperparameter tuning or the feature selection. So come first, what are the meta-heuristic optimization? Meta means the multiple, heuristic means they have some kind of earlier information on which they move to further to find another solution. So the meta-heuristic algorithms are dedicated to solve difficult optimization algorithm, typically NP-hard problems, for which there is no classical solving methods. Another optimization algorithms are also famous for the different type of problem like hyperparameter tuning, engineering design problems, production problem, data mining, scheduling, etc. And the general meta-heuristic algorithm are used because almost they give the global optimal value. So here in this example, the code in which we want to optimize the k value and select the select the feature selection. The meta-heuristic algorithm is used is the RAW algorithm. RAW algorithm is used because of its simplicity. It's generally based on the, here x is the value of position. Basically position means we have, basically position have, okay, there are several search agents, and every search agent has a value x value which have dimension equal to the number of features. If we have 22 features, then the every search agent basically a particularly particle or a particular age value that evolves around the search space possibility of solutions and select the optimal solution. And what is the dimension of that search agent? uh, the dimension equal to the number of features present in the data, and plus one additional dimension for the classifier parameter tuning. And here we take the k value between 1 to 10. This value is taken after the literature review, and they already mentioned the if value is greater than 10, that there is no beneficial. So we take the value from 1 to 10, and here the RAW algorithm basically based on, if we have 30 search agent, then first they find the best search agent and the worst search agent position, and then they subtract it and multiply with the random number and add into the current position to move the position which may be nearer to the best value. So in the code of the feature selection and parameter optimization, we need some functions. I already show the this function get modules, and the second function evaluate the model. This create the model in which we want to learn, or which we want to classify, use as a classifier. Here the evaluation is done. First step of the algorithm is, first we have to initialize the value of the search agents, and for initialization we take the value, upper bound, lower bound, number of search agent, and what are the dimensions. So we first pass the value. Here the number of search agents is 30 and the maximum iteration taken is a 500, and we call the main function, in which the training set, the label, search agents, and the maximum iteration is given as the parameters, function parameters. Okay. After that, this function is called. In this, first we calculate the dimension of the data set. Here we put the length of the training data set 0. If we put a bracket here with the 0 value, it gives the number of column. So number of column generally define the number of features. So this is the dimension, and we set the upper bound as a 1. 1 show if the value gets selected, then the upper the position here. If 2 has a 1 value, 3 has a 1 value, then the feature at the number 2 and the feature at the number 3, those are selected at some instance. And then we also add value 10 as the upper bound, and we increase the dimension. We put here value 10. Then next we define the lower bound, which is 1. Sorry, which is 0. Here we define the 0. So if value is 0, then that feature didn't get selected, and this dimension, this value 1 for the k value, lowest k value. Okay. Then first we find the position. We first call the function called initialization. Initialization function mainly initialize the position of search agent. If we have the whole search space, we have the search space n raised to power n for the n number of features, and then we have to search the what are the feature we have to select it. Then we randomly initialize position in the whole search space. So the positions are initialized with the help of this function. Here we randomly initialize the search agent positions, and then we, based on the value of 0.5, if the value which initialized is greater than 0.5, then the search agent value on that position goes to 1 or otherwise 0. The next thing, now we have to calculate based on those position. Basically, position describes the subset of features, and every position have a different number of subsets. So we have to select those features from the training data set. So we have prepared a function called select features. In the select feature, particular number of features based on the position. In what position the value contains 1. The position where has a value 1 is situated, then those from those position, or maybe those columns are selected from the training data set. And after those training columns are selected, then we call the model, and model get evaluated. And after that evaluation, we find the maximum value from the 30 search agents, because we want to improve the accuracy. And then after that, this is basically the starting phase. Then I already defined a step called stopping criteria. So here is the stopping criteria is maximum iteration, which we defined at 500 here. So this particular algorithm runs for the 500 times, and then search for the particularly k value and the particular number of features. So if we run this code now, then it may take some time, but I have already prepared some data based on this. Okay. Generally, we run the meta-heuristic algorithm for the 30 runs. 30 runs means one algorithm runs for 500 times for the 30 times. Runs are basically trials. So we can, at the end of the 30 reruns, we take the average accuracy. This particularly take for the precision, because I have if you seen, sometime value is 0.9897, second in second rerun 0.9897, then 0.99, 0.995, and 0.9 and 1. 1 means 100% accuracy achieved, and the overall average accuracy is 99.25, and the standard deviation is 0.0395. And if we show the how the values, okay, basically if we draw the convergence curve, how the values are accuracy, how the accuracy is starting. So we already seen, if we manually give the parameter k parameter, it may be give 84, but the binary raw start with the 84, then gradually increase above and goes up to uh, 99 99.25 maybe. This is the paper in which we, in this 3 algorithms are used, and the value here start from the 96 and goes up to 99.25. And if we compute this result with the other algorithm, and you can clearly see the what is the impact of feature selection and parameter optimization. There are several algorithms already present on those data sets, and we see here is a deep neural network, decision tree, which are more way complex than KNN classifier, SVM, and kernel store, KNN, ANN plus other algorithm, bagging algorithm. But our accuracy arrives in 99.25 after 30 runs, and with KNN. KNN is the simplest classifier among those which are already available in the literature. If we already saw, there you can see the computation, and we can see the different values of accuracy: 91, 90, 93, 95, which is not in the case of if we manually fed the value of KNN. So this is a particularly impact of the feature selection and the parameter tuning on a particular classifier. Another thing I want to show you, okay, these are the basically single vector which are considered as the best position after each rerun, and these are the values after 30 rerun. Here we take the mean after 30 rerun. Here we see this value is 0, means the feature on this ith position, ith column. 9th column is select in the 30 reruns, never gets selected, means this feature is considered as an irrelevant feature, or this one, or this one, and these are always selected every time. If we run same algorithm for the 30 times, these algorithms are more these features are more informative than these features. So with the help of meta-heuristic optimization algorithm, we are clearly distinguished between the more informative features and the redundant one or irrelevant one. After the run, we can maybe create the Excel file for the features or the values, or we can make the MAT file as you for your convenience to save the result after every run. So how a particular algorithm, this RAW algorithm is run. First, we initialize the population size, which is taken 30 in this case. Maximum iteration, which is 500. Dimension is equal to the number of features plus one number of parameter which we want to tune. And upper bound is 1, lower bound is 0, and the training data set. Second is initialize the search agent position randomly and the k value of KNN, which is we made a function, initialization function for this step. Third step is divide the data set into the 10 folds and train the KNN algorithm with the k value. This is basically the evaluation of the classifier on the selected number of features. Then select the best and worst search agent. Here, this is particularly code for the RAW algorithm. In this, we give the position and the fitness value, and on the current values of position and fitness, we found the next value of position, and we first calculate the best search agent or the worst search agent position, and we subtract those position, multiply with the random value. For random value, we multiply with the random value because we increase some step further to the best position, and we add into the current position. This is the for the RAW one. Okay, the next step in the algorithm is if the search agent fitness value is not better than the previous value, then we update this. Here, the fitness, this fitness vector in which the fitness of previous position and the new fitness is the fitness value, means accuracy value of new calculated position. If new fitness values are better than the old accuracy values, then we update the position as well as the accuracy value to select the best among all the search agents. Using the transfer function equation, change the search agent continuous position into the binary value. Basically, all the meta-heuristic algorithm gives the position values in the in between the 0 to 1 value. So, in between the upper bound and the lower bound. Here is the upper bound is 1 and the lower bound is 0. So the value of the position vector is always in between the 0 and 1. But we want to find the value 1 or 0. We need the discrete value. So in this, we use here the transfer function. Transfer function based on the tan h hyperbolic tangent function. The values are mapped from the continuous point values to the discrete value. If the value is greater than the described value, then that position is set as 1, and otherwise the current that column value is set as 0. And for the k value we use maximum minimum function, maximum minimum already which are present in the Python, that value. And go to the step 3 until the maximum. The next step is go to the step 3 until the maximum iteration is reached. So we repeat all the 3 to 7 step, 3 to 6 step until we reach at the maximum iteration. So that's why our program is running till then. If the values, if the iteration not completed, 500 iteration. Okay. After the 500 iteration, we got the best fitness value and the select optimal vector positions, and we can select those optimal features and k value for the further classification. It takes some time if we want to see the values. Here this one is a file I already computed. For the 500 iteration, 30 search agent values and 1 rerun. The maximum value is got is 98.81, 0.9881, and the best position. Okay, these are the first column, the fourth, and these are columns which has the 1 values are the selected features. So this is all from my side. If you have any queries or question about how the meta heuristic algorithm work, or how we tune the hyperparameters, you may ask.
Any questions from the participants? I know this meta heuristic has not been covered till date, means in the 3 sessions, but I think this is one of the important optimization techniques which are nowadays used in the machine learning part. So this is an important topic, and we have used the Python spider in order to demonstrate one meta heuristic technique. So optimization is required for feature selection, because when we are talking about AI and we are not talking about feature selection, so things are incomplete from our side. So that's why we arrange this. So if you have got any question, and if it is simply new for you, then you can just take your time and then you can connect with us again. So no issues from our side. You can take our email ID and other details. So whenever you want to connect regarding this, you can connect. So now announcement about tomorrow's lecture. So tomorrow we are going to start at 9:30 instead of 9 o'clock. So tomorrow we'll start at 9:30. So should not be late, right? So 9:30 doesn't mean we pone 10 baje. So 9:30 should be 9. Thank you so much. If you're not having any question or query. I think nobody has worked in the meta heuristic part. Otherwise, many questions would have been there, because first term is meta heuristic optimization techniques, and then next is the bio inspired. So bio inspired, the topic is touched by one of the expert, but not in that meta heuristic part. Just one name was there. So it's again a very wide topic and vast, you can say, field, but it is very, very useful for the machine learning part. So whenever we are going for the AI, we are always concentrating on the features. So how to select the features, right? So there are a lot many of features when we are going for the, you can say, the second part, that is signal processing. So how to select the features and how to optimize it so that we can have the optimized features, not the redundant features, right? So that part is discussed in this particular section, right? So maybe new for you, who are listening to this particularly. So at any case, in any steps you are having doubt, you can free to call us. No issues from our side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Suvita, for giving this session. Actually, you were disconnected from the other system. So thanks, Suvita, for preparing this lecture for the participants. So for the participant, I think this field is totally new, but this is very, very important. I have again announced. So in any step, in any case, you require any sort of guidance, so you people can call us. No issues from our side. So thank you so much, Suvita, and thank you so much, Dr. Birmun Singh, the supervisor of Suvita, professor. He's professor at Computer Science, Slide. So with this, we end our session. So tomorrow we'll meet at 9:30. Thank you, Suvita. Thank you so much once again.